Hell is a place of suffering and despair, but it has always stirred a great allure in mankind. No work has had as much influence on the consolidation of the image of hell in the popular imagination as Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. Dante's journey through hell started when he is in a dark forest, beset by beasts. Dante met the spirit of Virgil, the most virtuous of the Roman poets, who guided him on his journey through the 9 circles of hell. The entrance to hell was wide, without doors or obstacles. A large inscription reads, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." Hell had a unique geography, like a large, funnel-shaped crater. This crater was said to have been created by the impact of Lucifer's fall from heaven. To reach the bottom of hell, one had to pass through several levels, known as the circles of hell. The deeper the position of the soul, the worse its punishment. Before entering the first circle, there was the antechamber of evil, known as the vestibule of hell. That is where the indecisive and the cowardly, who preferred not to take a stand, were. They would not go to heaven or hell, but spent their days tormented by wasps, with the flesh of their feet devoured by worms. Further on, a crowd was crowding on the banks of the river Acheron, waiting for the boatman Charon to make the crossing. He shouted, "Wrecked souls, I have come for you for eternal punishment." After crossing the river, the souls were taken to Minos, the hellish judge, who assigned the sentence for the sinner's soul and set the circle to which he should be taken. Using his serpent's tail, Minos would wrap around the condemned man. The number of turns of the tail indicated the circle. The first circle was known as Limbo, the site of the unbaptized souls, and also of virtuous pagans such as Homer, Plato, Caesar, and Horace, among others. There was no suffering or cries of pain, only sighs of hopelessness for not having been enlightened by the Creator and deprived of the vision of God. The second circle was reserved for the lewd and lustful, known as the Valley of the Winds. In it resided figures such as Cleopatra, Paris, among others. Just as in life, these souls let their passions take over. In hell, they were dragged by strong and incessant winds, beaten and thrown by the whirlwinds. Not a few souls were lost in the pursuit of love and pleasure, leaving reason aside. In the third circle, there was an intense and freezing rain, filthy and eternal. A huge beast stood out in this place. Cerberus, the gigantic 3-headed dog that barked incessantly through its 3 throats. This circle was reserved for those who abused the sin of gluttony. Gluttons were stuck in the mud, created by their own vomit as they were bitten, scratched and torn by the infernal beast. The fourth circle was reserved for the prodigal and the avaricious, the wasteful and the greedy. They were afflicted in different ways by the sin of greed. They spent eternity shoving big bars of money in each other's direction, exchanging insults due to their opposite natures. While some shouted, "Why do you keep it?" the others replied, "Why do you waste it?" In the fifth circle, a great waterfall of boiling blood was supplying the river's Styx. In the waters of the river were the angry and choleric people, trying to give vent to their endless rage and attacking each other. At the bottom of the river were the spiteful ones, who tried to scream, but only their bubbles reached the surface. The city of Dis divided the Inferno. Here, the three Erinyes, also known as the Furies, and the fallen angels protected the Great Gate. Dis was the mark that separated the culpable sins, without intent to offend, from the malicious sins, committed knowingly and intentionally. The next and terrible circle was the fire cemetery of heretics. Inside open tombs were those who disbelieved in God's existence or rejected his teachings, taking others with them away from the grace of the Lord. They burned in the devouring flames inside their tombs. Then there was the Phlegeton Valley, the seventh circle, divided into three. In the first part, near the ruins of Crete, it was possible to see the terrible Minotaur, a creature half man and half bull. At the bottom of the valley, inside a river of blood, were the punished for having committed violent crimes. On the banks of the river, centaurs used their bows to shoot arrows at the criminals. The worse his crime, the more submerged the sinner had to be. Otherwise, he would be punished by the centaurs. The next valley was reserved for the suicides, those who had attempted against their own life. These people were turned into twisted trees, creating a sinister and terrifying forest. From their branches, no fruit grew, but only poisonous thorns. On their branches, the dark harpies made their nests and devoured the leaves, causing them intense pain. The endless wailing could be heard everywhere. Closing this circle was the Valley of the Abominable Sands, where sinners were placed in a desert of hot sand under a rain of fire. There, those who had been violent against God, such as blasphemers, were left lying in the burning sand. The sodomites forced to run through the desert without stopping, and the usurers forced to sit on the flames. The eighth circle was reserved for fraudsters of different kinds. This circle was known as the Malbolgia and was divided into 10 pits. In the first were the seducers and deviants who deceived their neighbors to achieve their aspirations. These were harried day and night by horned demons. In the next pit were the flatterers and sycophants, sunk in dung and feces. People who spent their lives deceiving others with flattering words would spend eternity immersed in their own excrement. In the third pit were the practitioners of simony, buried upside down. Only their legs were visible, being baked by candles. They had committed the crime of selling salvation, positions in the clergy, or false relics. In the fourth pit were the seers, who pretended to know the future, something that only God could do. They had their heads turned upside down, and the tears of despair moistened their own buttocks. In the 5th pit, the corrupt were boiled in a lake of boiling tar, and when they tried to reach the surface, they were attacked by demons who forced them to submerge. The hypocrites were in the 6th pit. Although they were wearing beautiful cloaks, they were heavy as lead. Keeping up their good looks was a real ordeal. In this pit, nailed to the ground, was the body of Caiaphas, the priest who advised the Pharisees to crucify Jesus. In the 7th pit, the thieves were attacked by serpents, which stole their human features. In the next pit were the evil counselors, burning with fire for having led others into fraud and corruption. The sowers of discord were stabbed by demons in the 9th pit, reserved for those who divided families, fueled social conflict, and ended unity in the church. Finally, in the last pit were the counterfeiters, covered by all diseases and pestilences. Because they had forged, lied, and simulated, they suffered various diseases according to their crime. In the 9th and last circle of hell was Lake Cocytus, known as the Lake of Lamentations. Contrary to what we might imagine, the deepest place in hell is not the hottest, but the most frozen, due to the flapping of Lucifer's wings. Inside the waters of a frozen lake, only part of the torso and heads of the traitors were visible. These sinners saw their tears freeze as they wept in despair. The traitors were divided into 4 classes: those who betrayed their families, those who betrayed their homeland, those who disregarded hospitality, and those who betrayed their masters. In the center of the 9th circle resided Lucifer, the greatest of all traitors, the one who betrayed God. Also trapped in the ice and devouring the 3 greatest traitors in history: Judas, Brutus, and Cassius.
Purgatory is an island on which a gigantic mountain stands, kissing the sky. It comprises 7 terraces, where souls go through the trials and teachings involved in each one of the famous deadly sins. At the top of the mountain, the earthly paradise represents the state of complete purification and the preparations for ascending to paradise. The boat carrying souls to Purgatory is guided by an angel who sits at its helm, a bright and splendid figure. His arrival is followed by the singing of the passengers, who all chant Psalm 113 in unison. After his arrival, the angel blesses the souls with the sign of the cross, allowing them to disembark and start their purgation journey. He then leaves as quickly as he arrived, returning to collect more souls. Ante-Purgatory is where souls not yet ready to start the repentance and purification process are kept. This pre-purification place echoes the idea that some saved sinners were less worthy than others, and so had to spend time at the base of the mountain to counteract conditions that prevented them from being freed from sin. This is where souls excommunicated by the Church must spend time in ante-purgatory equivalent to 30 times the period they suffered excommunication. This period served as punishment for the insubordination that led to their separation from the Church. The second group includes souls saved despite later repentance. Their purgation period is a cleansing process in proportion to the tardiness of their repentance on earth. They include souls that were slow to devote themselves to God, and those who died without absolution. Prior to reaching the first terrace, the souls must pass through a door protected by a guardian of St. Peter. This angel marks the soul's forehead 7 times with his sword, symbolizing the 7 sins that must be purified. He also holds 2 keys, one gold and the other silver, to open the door that leads to Purgatory. These keys symbolize God's mercy and justice. Ascending the mountain is difficult, as the souls are burdened with sins, but as they climb, instead of becoming more tired, they are lighter, as their sins have been purged along the way. The first terrace is meaningful for being the place where souls face and purge pride, which is considered by many to be the most crucial of the deadly sins, as it is the root of all others. The soul's experience on this terrace is physical and spiritual. Penitents are forced to carry heavy burdens, bowing under the weight, symbolic of the oppressive pressure of pride. This is a direct reflection of the sin they are atoning for. As pride raised them above others, now they are literally lowered, a physical representation of the humility they must learn. Alongside physical penance, the terrace also had a series of exemplars, marble statues depicting historical and mythological instances of pride and its demise. These exemplars remind penitents of the devastating consequences of pride and the value of humility. The journey through this terrace is a learning and transformative process. Souls learn how to recognize and reject pride in themselves, an essential step toward their purification and readiness to ascend to the next terrace. This entire process epitomizes the notion that true understanding and purification begin with humility and the ability to recognize one's own mistakes and limitations. The sin of envy is tackled and purged on the second terrace. This is a barren landscape, standing in stark contrast to the terrace of pride, which featured artistically elaborate carvings. This visual element reflects the gloomy nature of envy, a sin that Dante described as particularly harmful, representing the negative longing for someone else to lose their possessions or apparent advantages. On the terrace of envy, penitent souls are portrayed with their eyes sewn shut, wearing rough fabrics like blind beggars. This depiction of eyes shut reveals the nature of envy, a sin that means looking grudgingly at the good of others. The souls on the terrace of envy are stripped of the ability to see, representing the spiritual blindness that envy imposes. The penitent's vestments are the same color as the terrace stones, making it harder to distinguish them at first. This absence of visual separation reinforces the idea that envy is a sin seeking equality by reducing others, rather than elevating oneself. Sameness and indistinctness stand for the destructive nature of envy, which wants to wipe out differences and success of others. On the third terrace, penitents are plunged into a thick black smoke, symbolizing the blindness and turmoil caused by anger. This smoke is described as denser and more bitter than that of hell or the darkest night. The atmosphere of the terrace of wrath is marred by darkness and poor visibility, echoing the nature of the rage that obscures reason and prevents sharp vision and understanding. Wrath is a sin that often clouds understanding and hinders a clear perception of reality, leading to impulsive and destructive actions. While experiencing blindness, souls are urged to reflect on how wrath can divert us from the right path and how it is necessary to overcome it to achieve spiritual clarity and inner peace. The penitents on this terrace engage in a joint prayer, suggesting a sense of community and solidarity on their cleansing journey. Unlike the divisive nature of wrath, the shared prayer and dependence on each other to travel the terrace stresses the importance of reconciliation and harmony. This opposition between the destructive nature of wrath and the healing found in community and prayer is a central motif in this terrace. The Purgatory's fourth terrace depicts the cleansing of the sin of sloth. The penitents on this terrace are running in a group. This action of running together represents a collective attempt to overcome the painful memories of solitary and lazy behavior on Earth. The constant movement stands in direct contrast to the idle nature of laziness, stressing how important action and effort are on the spiritual journey. Sloth is a sin that stems from an insufficient or improper desire to achieve the good. Unlike the previous vices, which start from a love of what is wrong, sloth arises from an unwillingness to seek the good. This spiritual apathy delays the soul's progress on its journey towards God. The penitent's non-stop running symbolizes the effort needed to overcome spiritual and physical inertia, a call to be diligent and zealous in seeking salvation. The sins of the miser and the prodigal are faced and purified on the fifth terrace, characterized by the vision of the penitents lying prostrate on the ground, symbolizing both their submission to divine justice and the nature of the sin they are atoning for. Greed, focused on accumulating material wealth, and prodigality, with its reckless squandering of that same wealth, are both sins that turn attention away from true spiritual abundance. When forcing penitents to lie face down on the ground, the need to turn away from earthly desires and turn towards God is made clear. Purgatory's sixth terrace addresses the purging of the sin of gluttony. The penitents are subjected to an ordeal that reflects the nature of this vice. They are tormented by the constant presence of food and agreeable fragrances, which, however, are kept out of their reach. This torment epitomizes the constant temptation and desire that gluttony brings about, but which here is used as a cleansing tool. This experience forces penitents to face their excessive desire directly and learn to control it, a crucial step in their redemptive journey. Instead of simply punishing the penitents with hunger, which would have been a direct response to their indulgence in food, uncontrolled desire is targeted. This approach represents the soul's journey of recognizing and overcoming deep inner desires, rather than simply enduring external temptations. It reflects the belief that true satisfaction is not found in material surplus, but in moderation and the pursuit of higher spiritual values. By overcoming gluttony, a sin that is manifested both physically and spiritually, it represents liberation from earthly cravings and the ascent to a state of greater understanding and spiritual purity. Purgatory's seventh and final terrace addresses the sin of disordered carnal desire, a profoundly human and complex issue. Penitents on this terrace are purified by fire, symbolizing lust's burning and devouring nature. Unlike water or air, this element has a unique duality. It is destructive and purifying. Fire represents the out-of-control passion of lust, but it also serves as a means of cleansing and renewal, scorching impure desires and allowing penitents to be spiritually reborn. As opposed to the other sins dealt with on the previous terraces, lust has a more direct connotation with love and desire. There's a fine line between pure love and unruly carnal desire. The penitents sing hymns and prayers about true love and the beauty of chastity. These songs contrast with the flames, symbolizing the transformation of impure desire into divine and pure love. This is central to the journey of purification, as it represents the transmutation of earthly desires into higher spiritual aspirations. The seventh terrace stands as a high point of the purgatory journey. This is where self-love, envy, anger, laziness, greed, and gluttony are brought together in the concept of lust, a sin that contains all the unregulated urges of the human heart. Fire purification symbolizes the final and most challenging cleansing, preparing souls for the ascent to paradise. At the top of the mountain, the earthly paradise is portrayed as a place of stunning natural beauty with bright flowers, fruit trees, and clear waters. This idyllic landscape embodies the perfection of divine creation and the original harmony between humans and nature. The garden is a striking contrast to the sufferings and tribulations experienced on the previous terraces of purgatory, providing a peaceful haven of renewal. The earthly paradise in purgatory is a transitional place for souls. This is where they prepare for their final journey to the heavenly paradise. This garden not only symbolizes humanity's original state of innocence, but also the possibility of redemption and a return to grace. The souls that have reached this stage completed their purification and are ready for the final ascent to paradise, where they will find eternal union with God. The garden stands for the hope and promise of redemption notwithstanding the fall of humanity. Grace and divine love provide a path back to communion with the Creator. The final part of Dante's epic journey is Paradise, a transcendental journey into the heavenly realm. Dante, after having ascended to heaven, crossed the different celestial spheres until he reached the divine presence. We will now begin our journey through each of the celestial spheres until we reach God. Dante imagined paradise as a series of 9 celestial spheres, each representing a celestial body or planet in the medieval geocentric system. Standing tall above all the spheres is the Empyrean, the home of God and the angels, a realm of pure light and divine love transcending physical space. This structure represents an ascending journey towards holiness, wisdom, and ultimately the presence of God. The first sphere of Dante's paradise is the moon, the heaven of the fickle, those who on earth have had their vows shattered for causes beyond their control. This sphere reveals the complexity of the heavenly realm in which human virtues and faults are examined through the lens of divine justice. The moon epitomizes mutability and inconsistency, qualities associated with its ever-changing appearance. This heaven is a place for souls who have been prevented from keeping their monastic or marriage vows, not by their own choice, but by external interference. Picarda Donati, a nun who was forced to leave the convent, is among these. Peacefully accepting her position on the moon, Picarda reminds Dante that in heaven, there is no longing to be in a higher place, because each soul is in the spot determined by God's will, where it can most adequately fulfill its role. Acceptance of God's will, regardless of broken promises and unattained aspirations on earth, is a powerful lesson. Mercury is the second sphere, the domain of the well-meaning, those whose virtuous actions on earth have been sullied somewhat by the lust for fame and recognition. The souls in Mercury are those who have done good deeds, but whose motivations have been partly corrupted by the thirst for earthly glory. This sphere stresses a crucial truth about virtue. The purpose behind actions is just as important as the actions themselves. These souls' presence on Mercury rather than in a higher heavenly realm explains how the craving for recognition can tarnish even the noblest acts. Dante comes across Justinian, the Byzantine emperor, as the primary example of a mercurial soul. He recounts the history of the Roman Empire, spanning its conquests and failures, and the subsequent conversion to Christianity. He ponders how his rule was driven as much by divine motivations as by the desire for personal glory. Justinian's account provides a reflection on the nature of justice and governance, and how these are influenced by personal motivations. Mercury, hard to spot from Earth due to the brightness of the sun, symbolizes the nature of the good deeds done by these souls. Although virtuous, they are overshadowed by earthly desires. Dante's depiction of Mercury stresses the subtlety with which the quest for glory can lead even the noblest efforts astray, a frequent theme in his work. True virtue must be devoid of all selfish desire. Venus glows as the heaven of lovers and represents the third celestial sphere, where those who have loved passionately but justly find their celestial rest. This is where love transcends physical infatuation and aligns itself with the divine order. In mythology and astrology, Venus, the planet associated with love and beauty, is the ideal setting for souls who have had intense earthly love experiences, but who have kept their desires within the boundaries of morality and virtue. This sphere honors true love, that which, despite its earthly nature, has been purified and elevated to a higher expression of itself. This sphere mirrors the complex nature of human love. This is a place of reconciliation, where earthly love is purified and elevated, and passions are aligned with the divine will. In all its forms, love is a mighty force that can lead to both downfall and redemption. The sun is the fourth sphere of Dante's paradise, the heavenly dwelling of the wise and enlightened, an orb that shines with the glow of wisdom and knowledge. Dante meets the souls of the great masters, theologians and philosophers, all of whose lives were spent pursuing the truth and understanding divine matters. In its radiant glory, the sun represents wisdom's light, enlightening the mind and guiding the soul to the truth. In this luminous circle, Dante is encircled by a crown of light, consisting of the souls of the wise. This revolving crown is a visual metaphor for eternal contemplation and the never-ending pursuit of knowledge and truth. St. Thomas Aquinas is among these eminent souls who, along with other great thinkers such as Albertus Magnus, Boetius, and Bede, debate matters of faith and reason, philosophy and theology. Consequently, the sun is not only a symbol of intellectual enlightenment, but also shows the need to channel knowledge and understanding towards high and divine ends. This heaven reinforces Dante's idea that true wisdom does not lie in the amassing of knowledge, but in the ability to see reality through the lens of faith and divine love. The fifth sphere is Mars, devoted to the warrior souls who fought for just causes, and this heaven resonates with the spirits of the brave and their sacrifices. Symbolized by the red planet tied to war, it honors those who have committed their lives to upholding justice and faith. This is where Dante meets historical and mythological figures, symbols of bravery and virtue, and explores the complex relationship between war, morality, and divinity. On entering Mars, Dante is greeted by an impressive sight. The souls of warriors form a shining cross in the sky, representing the union of Christian faith and military valor. This junction of lights is the symbol of Christ's supreme sacrifice, the point at which human suffering and divine redemption converge. When guided by pure and righteous intentions, warrior actions can be an expression of divine will. Mars is a vital aspect of the spiritual quest, recognizing that true bravery is not about conquest and violence, but about the ability to fight for higher principles and justice. Jupiter's sphere, on the other hand, is the home of fair leaders and rulers. Represented by the planet known for its size and glow, Jupiter symbolizes the celestial order applied to human government, stressing the responsibility of leaders to maintain order and justice in their domains. As Dante enters this sphere, he sees a wonderful visual representation of justice. The souls of righteous rulers form luminous images in the sky, including the Latin words diligit justitiam, or love justice, and the figure of an eagle. These celestial formations reflect the divine order and the importance of ruling with justice, mercy, and caution. This sphere praises leaders who, down through history, have lifted themselves above corruption and personal ambition to serve with integrity, echoing the order and justice of paradise itself. The seventh sphere of paradise is Saturn, the home of the contemplative, those who on earth searched for divine wisdom through introspection and detachment from worldly distractions. This heaven, symbolized by the most distant planet visible to the naked eye at the time of Dante, represents seclusion from the world and the search for the deepest truth. Saturn is typified by a quiet and serene atmosphere, in sharp contrast to the bustling activity of the lower heavens. Such silence is symbolic, echoing the introspective nature of contemplation and the need to mute external distractions to hear the voice of God. The souls engaged in contemplation in this sphere find the peace and spiritual depth they sought during their earthly lives. This heaven points out the importance of silence, solitude, and prayer when searching for divine wisdom. Contemplative souls are portrayed here as elevated beings who have reached a deeper understanding of existence, guided by the light of faith and the urge to be one with the divine. The fixed stars represent the eighth celestial sphere, lying beyond the planets, and are home to the souls of saints and martyrs, who live their earthly lives with unshakable faith and an unbreakable commitment to Christ's teachings. The fixed stars are a perfect symbol for eternity and the immutability of true faith. This heaven celebrates the Christian faith in its purest and most fervent form. Here, Dante encounters biblical characters and venerated saints, whose stories and sacrifices form the basis of Christian tradition. These include the apostles, including St. Peter, St. James, and St. John, representing the foundations of the Church and testifying to the veracity and strength of the faith. The Primum Mobile is the ninth and penultimate sphere of Dante's paradise, the outermost of the physical universe, driving all the other celestial spheres. This heaven represents God's power, the primordial source of all movement and order in the cosmos. The Primum Mobile is a symbol of divine omnipotence, its constant and sustaining presence in all creation. This is a realm of pure and balanced movement, a contrast to the contemplative stillness of Saturn and the fixed stars. This heaven is the engine of the universe, the divine strength that propels and orchestrates the movements of the celestial bodies. This is where Dante is faced with the magnificence of creation and God's providential order, manifested in the perfect, synchronized movement of the spheres. As the driving force of the universe, the Primum Mobile also symbolizes the soul's never-ending quest for union with God. As the heavenly spheres are driven by love and desire for God, the human soul is impelled by an innate desire to return to its divine source, an eternal aspiration that sustains the spiritual journey. The Empyrean is the final, highest, and most sublime sphere, transcending the traditional concept of celestial space, the realm of pure light, eternal truth, and divine love, the place of God's immediate presence. There, the physical limitations of the universe vanish, resulting in a spiritual reality where divine truth and love are experienced in all their fullness. Its light is not just a source of enlightenment, but the very essence of God, radiating out in all directions and embracing souls in its presence. In the Empyrean, distinctions between being and knowing are blurred, as the souls present there participate directly in divine truth. At the heart of the Empyrean, Dante bears witness to the celestial rose, a metaphor for the communion of holy souls with God. This rose is a theater-like structure, with the saints sitting on its different tiers, each in a state of perfect beatitude. The Virgin Mary holds pride of place, symbolizing intercession and maternal love. The rose petals stand for the souls of the blessed, reflecting the order and harmony of the heavenly kingdom. Dante sees the Trinity, three concentric light circles symbolizing the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This vision is the pinnacle of Dante's spiritual journey, representing the final understanding and union of the soul with the divine mystery. Therefore, the Empyrean is the zenith of the Divine Comedy, where Dante reaches the deepest understanding and the most profound union with God. This is a place of perfect harmony, where divine love and wisdom are perfectly experienced. The questions and longings of Dante's journey find their definitive answer here, and the soul is granted eternal peace in God's presence.